Well, you just have to look at which states the candidates are in today to know where the closest battles are taking place. John McCain has been holding a rally in Missouri where polls show he and his opponent neck and neck, while Barack Obama is campaigning in Florida where the Democrat has a very slight edge. So what about the national picture? Well, here with the latest on that and more is senior political researcher Alan Silverleaf. Alan, great to have you with us.
Good to be here.
So, Alan, we know that CNN's last national poll had Obama with an 8-point lead. How are things looking now?
Well, the polls now are showing John McCain closing the gap just a little bit. Our new Opinion Research Corporation poll that came out just earlier today shows Barack Obama with a 5-point lead, 51 to 46% over John McCain among likely voters nationwide. Again, in our poll in early October, Obama had an 8-point lead, so the gap appears to be tightening just a little bit. The problem for John McCain, however, is when you look into the internals in the poll. When you get past that top line right at the top, you see the challenge that John McCain is really facing here at the very end of the election. I have a lot of numbers written down here, so I'm just going to tick through them to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. When we ask voters, for example, who do you trust to handle the financial crisis, they favor Obama over McCain by a 15-point margin, 53 to 38%. When you ask voters, who do you think is going to be better for the middle class, Obama is favored by almost 30 points, 63 to 32%. If you ask voters who's better on the economy, they favor Obama by 19 points. Who's better on health care? Obama by 26 points. Who's better even on taxes? Obama has the edge on that issue by 14 points now. And of course, taxes is usually an easy issue for Republican candidates. Who do you trust more in energy? They favor Obama over McCain by 15 points. Earlier in the summer, McCain had an edge on that issue when oil prices went sky high, and he was saying that we need to drill now. Drill is what he was saying. He had an advantage there. Now that is gone. One of the most striking numbers, however, in this poll is the question of who is the strongest leader. Right now, on that issue, voters say Obama by a margin of 47 to 44%. Back when we asked this question in the beginning of September 3rd to the 5th, as you can see right here in the graphic, McCain had a 19-point edge on that question. McCain, obviously, he was a former POW, a former fighter pilot in the Navy. This ought to be a natural for him, especially up against a guy who's a legislator like Obama. If he's losing on this issue, who's the strongest leader? It shows that he's in real trouble heading down the stretch here.
Wow, Alan, that is a real turnaround. Those indicators are pretty tough news for McCain, even if the national polls seem to be tightening somewhat. So is there any good news for John McCain in all of the data?
Well, it's not all bad news for McCain. There are a few good numbers that we can point to. Number one, the issue of is McCain going to be likely to carry out Bush's policies if he gets into the White House? Barack Obama is spending a lot of time and a lot of money trying to tie McCain to the unpopular Republican incumbent in the White House. You can see in our poll in early October, a majority of Americans said yes, McCain would be likely to carry out Bush's policies if he gets into the White House. Now it's split just about 50-50. 49% say yes, McCain would carry out Bush's policies. 50% say no. So to the extent that McCain can succeed in divorcing himself from Bush, that certainly helps him. McCain has also recovered an advantage that he used to have on the issue of Iraq. Who do you trust more there? Voters by a narrow margin say McCain. And on the issue of terrorism, McCain has had an advantage on that question throughout this campaign. He still has the advantage there as well. You know, the problem, and of course, one thing that McCain's got going for him is 10% of voters still say they haven't made up their mind. So, you know what? If the edge for Obama is 5 percentage points, you really need a swing of only about 2.5 percentage points in each direction off of Obama's margin and in favor of McCain to bring this race into a dead heat. But when you get right down to it, McCain is just wrestling with some real negative fundamentals for the Republican Party this year. They've had the White House for 2 terms. There's a natural desire for change. That desire for change is being exacerbated by the unpopularity of the Republican incumbent in the White House. The economy is hurting, so voters want to go to the party that hasn't been in charge while the economy went south. The war is unpopular in Iraq and to a lesser extent in Afghanistan. All that cuts against John McCain. And to top it all off, Barack Obama has a huge advantage on the money front. He just raised another $150 million in September. So there are a couple of bright spots in the polls for John McCain, but the fundamentals, the basic dynamics of the terrain work very strongly against McCain right now.
Yeah, Alan, you mentioned that $150 million that Obama managed to raise in September. One piece of bad news for McCain this week, and the other, of course, was that former Secretary of State Colin Powell endorsed Barack Obama. We know that made huge headlines. Will it actually impact the election? Do voters care?
Well, that's a good question. That remains to be seen. It might help at the margins with some independent voters who are still undecided. You know what? John McCain's strong suit, like I was just talking about, is national security. It is foreign policy. To the extent that that Colin Powell can help reassure voters that, yes, Obama can measure up on those topics as well. Yeah, it can help. This might have helped a little bit more, to be frank. If you talk to a lot of Republican and Democratic political strategists, they'll say an endorsement from Colin Powell would have helped more earlier in the summer when voters still had a lot of unresolved questions about Obama's experience. By and large, for the most part, a lot of those questions have already been answered. Quite frankly, this might be more important in terms of post-election. If Obama does go on to win, this could matter to him next year. If he's sitting in the White House, if he has a foreign policy crisis, he can reach across the aisle to a Republican, an established Republican like Colin Powell. That could be helpful. And frankly, this endorsement could help Colin Powell. If he wants to stay relevant, if he wants to stay sort of in the mix in a very Democratic Washington next year, if Obama in fact wins and the Democrats pad their majorities in Congress, it could be helpful for him to have gotten on board before Election Day.
Yeah, absolutely. We are all thinking about the election ahead, but of course, life post-election is going to be all the more important. Alan, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Sure.